Hi, everyone. My name is Darren Cole, the director of Seasides, and this is a very important film for me because I had the opportunity when working with Kwame Nantambu to be at the Sanford Trayvon Martin trial. And for us, it wasn't really about being necessarily directly at the courthouse. It was really just talking and speaking with the people in the community. And though we were actually making a larger film, this one clip actually stuck out to me so much that I pulled it and wanted to always keep it as its own film. So Seasides is actually like an extraction from like a larger film that I was making, but I was like, you know what? This has that vibe and that feel. And I think some people will notice that it's a one take film, so it's only one shot. And I thought as a cinematographer, I just loved the movement. And that actually is like marked the date for how I actually started transitioning and using my handheld work to make longer sort of cinematic moments from actually shooting this one shot. So my whole style of how I be like evolved as a filmmaker, actually, this is like one of the pivotal moments. So I really enjoy this film and look forward to hearing y'all's feedback.
I enjoyed it a lot. And what struck me, I had to watch it twice because I thought, is this one take? And I'm watching it, and oh, it is one take. So it's very well done how you did that, because you always seem to capture the right moment on camera when something is being said or told, and you're moving the camera quite a bit because you're going from, I think, 3 people at the most in the room. There might be 4 at one time, but you're going around, and they're not sitting close together. They're sitting a little farther apart, and so you're catching everything right when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think honestly, it was just one of those things that, like I said, it sort of made me think about how I was using the camera. And I think on that same production, I did a lot of like longer takes, like experimenting with like, I know, cinema verte or direct cinema styles of documenting. And I think the kicker with this project was they were spread out, but the mirror, and then I started to learn the power of like, okay, you can use that mirror. And I feel like it was really cool to hear people speak about their perspective, but actually be able to see it from different sides or different perspectives that they were giving. And I think, I mean, you mentioned that there's a third and a fourth character, and I guess the third or fourth character could have been myself or the TV, which I thought was an extra little like lucky catch in that situation because it wasn't planned. This was like a man on the street, candid moment that I had just captured. So like, I think when I kind of noticed that there's this TV, I was like, oh, cool. I can like also get and like pan and grab that, and it kind of like helped fill the seams of how I'm moving around the room.
Now, you filmed this during the trial, and this is also in the same city where the murder happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the trial is not that farther along than when the murder happened. It's what, 8 months, maybe 9 months, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so to me, it's interesting catching the feelings of the people in the room. And now that we have a sense of history behind it, and it's like what they were hoping for didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was recalling many times while watching it. It's like, oh, I wonder what they would think now.
I think I would be curious. I think that in a lot of ways, that's why I thought this piece is like special in a lot of ways, because like I think when I first like sort of shot it, it was like, seen as a clip that didn't really work for the film we were making, right? Like these people just said that stuff and it was like a throwaway clip, and they were saying kind of like whatever, and it was in real time. There's no concrete evidence. And I think through making this, and hopefully this answers the question enough, but I think through making this, I think that's why the piece is more exciting to me now, because we get to guess and interpret what would they say, because they didn't actually know the outcome. Like the trial is literally happening on the screen, and that barbershop was like maybe a mile or two from the courthouse. So we went to the courthouse first and got in, and we were there, but we were like, this isn't what we want. We don't want to just like be in the courtroom with everyone else, like filming what everyone else is filming. Like, let's go talk to some people. So we drove a little bit down the road. We went into a breakfast, talked to some people there. The breakfast was primarily people of another color. So they had their opinions, and we actually just heard them talking about it like while we were eating breakfast. And then we left and we're like, let's go to this barbershop and see what they're talking about. And then they kind of like had this display of emotion. So I wonder what they would think now. I think in a lot of ways, I feel like they would probably think that their trial or their moment, that moment in history for them was probably the catalyst for recent trials that we've seen where the sort of result of how the people involved were sort of how would I say, the people involved and how they were handled by the government or the law is starting to become different. And I think people think back to earlier trials and earlier situations where people don't feel like justice was served.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, you said this is a short film, was taking out, and you were doing a much larger project. What's that project called?
That project was with the artist that I'm filming. His project at the time was looking at the this is kind of funny because it's like not, he was looking at the drug trade through the eyes of hip hop and how it's very influential in Florida. That it's called, there's like a DVD that we made and it was called Florida Keys. So it's about like how a lot of families and different people have come up through heavy drug relations. So we were going to all these places. And then during those trials, we were also like, hey, we were in Ocala, Florida. And I think, which is pretty close to Sanford. And Ocala the night before, actually some young men of color actually got off for the same exact thing. Supposedly they got off for stand your ground. They actually, on the block that I was staying in, that house, all of a sudden there's a bunch of people lined up, there's white tape on the ground, and someone had been shot. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty intense. And then I found out the next day that, like, I guess the person in the car like came up and like threatened the people walking, and then the people walking like shot the dude.
Wow.
So the people got let off the next day. So it was like this weird thing where, like, me being from Milwaukee, I was like, wow, this is so much to take in about like the laws can like work and not work in people's favor at any given moment. Not to say anything about my political stance on those things, but like it was just like, wow, this is not where I'm from, and I'm learning and I'm becoming educated just because I'm here with my camera.
Let's talk about your background a little bit. You got a BFA in 2008 in Milwaukee. And like you mentioned before, you also teach. What do you do now? And I know you were born in Kansas City, Missouri. So how did you get from Kansas City, Missouri to now you're in Boston, I believe, right? So what are you doing in Boston?
So I lived in Boston for the past decade, which was great. And the last thing I did in Boston, I was a film and video professor at Massachusetts College of Art and Design, which was an awesome experience. And it's also the place where I got my MFA. And I taught there for 3 years full time. And after 3 years, I decided, because my advisor when I was in school there was like, hey, artists should think about teaching. It's a good way to like have some money and not be broke all the time. And I was like, all right, I'll take her up on the offer. At work, 3 years went by and they were like, do you want to stay? And I was like, well, now that I want to teach, I should probably go to school with the intention of teaching. So I applied to a PhD program because I'm very much into emerging technology. I think when I think about my practice, it's maybe one part something cool and entertaining to watch, but I think the other part is that I'm really into technology. Even the camera I shot for Seasides was a 5D Mark II. I got that camera immediately when it came out. That changed a lot of the landscape of filmmaking. I also shot it on the 5D Mark II in black and white. It's actually natively, the clip that you are watching is the clip directly from the camera shot in black and white, because those cameras had a black and white feature. And then since leaving Milwaukee in 2004, I dove into the industry, did a lot of music videos, a lot of stuff in hip hop, produced films that have done festival runs and been a producer in that role, and was the first ever digital storyteller for the city of Boston, and have done a lot of like installation and interactive work that is based around moving image, sound, and like site specific. Like the last show I think that was notable would be at the Old South Meeting House in Boston, where I had a show called When Up Look Down, which talks about how enslaved individuals had this view that was actually like above the pulpit that's on the ground floor. And I had a 2-channel live video installation where you actually got a view, because you're no longer allowed to go to the top decks where enslaved individuals were forced to go back in the day. So it was a live camera that was always running for 9 months, looking at the ground floor. So you got the perspective from them, but you could stand on the ground. And then the other screen in the 2-channel was a video that I made of people and their interpretation of how they would use the space if they were allowed to occupy that space in a way that meant something to them. So look, moving forward, I'm just like excited about continuing to make moving image work. And I think the funny thing about it is it all started at UWM in Milwaukee because it's such a place of like eclectic and diverse work. So that's when I really got hip to like experimental and abstract ways of like storytelling. And when I went back for my master's degree, I chose mass art because they had a lot of filmmakers that were working in that way. And I felt like if I'm going to send a film to a festival, I at least want it to feel 100% like something Darren would make.
Well, thank you for submitting your film. You got any projects that are going to be released soon or anything like that we should know about?
I think the biggest one that maybe some people might have access to in the areas, I've been working with an indigenous artist, Missy Whiteman, in the Minneapolis area. So we have a show coming up. We have a project called The Coyote Way, which started as a silent film using Plains Indian Sign Language, which was the original language Native Americans used when they were trading between different tribes. And we've expanded that movie into an expanded cinema over the last decade. So our next iteration of the film, it's kind of like the same content, but we do it different ways. This next one will be at a planetarium at the Bell Museum in September. So I think I'm really, really excited about that. And then just seeing how this film does. And then I put out another 16mm film that I sent to festivals as well. So we're excited to see how that comes back to us. And I have a VR project with the Milwaukee artist. So it's a VR experience that I hope to have done by the end of the year. But I've been working on that one for like 7 years. So we're getting there.
I know how that is. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yo, thank you so much for having us. I can't wait to get to MKE Fest. And thank you for all those that were in attendance to see Seasides.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.